Good morning and welcome to Teal House Farm. Today, thank you. Today we're going to show you how to use your apple scraps, so the peels and the cores, to make some cinnamon apple syrup for your pancakes. You ready? Let's go.
Like a bird on a tree, I'm just sitting here.
So we've been doing a lot of canning this fall, getting ready for winter. The last things that I did is I canned a bunch of apple slices, and I also made several different varieties of apple sauce. This one is a mulberry apple sauce from our mulberry bush and our apple tree. When you do that, you're left with a lot of peels and apple cores that usually go in the compost pile. But last year I thought to myself, surely there's something I could do with these instead of throwing heaps and heaps of apple peels out in the compost pile. And so I did some research and I found that you could actually use them to make apple syrup. And so I canned it and it did great. The girls loved it, so we're going to do that again this year. Here's what you need. You need apple peels and cores. You want to seed the cores. I stick mine in a baggie, put them in the freezer, because I'm usually so knee-deep in apple slices and apple sauces, I don't want to battle syrup at the same time. And so we're going to do this about a month later. You need cinnamon sticks. It has to be sticks if you're going to pressure can it. Cinnamon powder spice gets a real weird taste if you try to pressure can with it. And sugar. Lots of sugar. I use the biggest pot I have, which is my water bath canner. And by the way, I said before pressure can. You don't have to pressure can this. You can water bath can the syrup. So I'm actually going to make it in here. We'll strain it into another pot when it's all done, so I can clean this out and get this ready to can the jars. So I've added my apple peels and cores. The more you use, the more flavorful it be. This is 2 big gallon bags worth. I'm going to fill it up with water and add 4 cinnamon sticks, and I'm just going to let it boil into a nice juice for 20 or 30 minutes. Bring it to a boil, let it simmer, and then we will strain it and add sugar. It's a lot like making jelly. We're going to make the juice first, then we're going to add the sugar. The nice thing with syrup versus jelly is it's not an exact science. You do not have to have a precise amount of water and a precise amount of juice. It's a little more of an ish, which is nice. We're ready to go here. We're going to bring it to a boil. It's going to take a long time because of all this water. And then we'll simmer it, like I said, 20 to 30 minutes. I did add some apple pieces. I had some apples in the fridge that were getting kind of old, so I threw those in there too. As long as it's apple-y, it'll make it taste like apple syrup. We've been simmering now for about 30 minutes. It's got a nice golden color. Everything's real soft in there. So we're going to strain out all the stuff, and then we're going to put the juice in a different stock pot so I can clean this one. We're going to add our sugar. Are you ready, Annie? We've got our jars sterilizing in the oven, so those will be ready to go too. Let's go. We have my 2-gallon stock pot full. It didn't all fit. That's okay. We might make 2 batches, but do know that this is going to boil down considerably. Now we add the sugar. It is not a It is not a sugar-free recipe. The sugar is what makes it so sticky. So we're gonna add 6 cups of sugar to our 2-gallon stock pot. So you can kind of do the math from there if you're using a bigger, smaller pot. And then we're going to bring it to a boil and then stirring it constantly so it doesn't scorch the bottom. Then we're gonna lower the heat and let it simmer until a lot of the liquid starts to evaporate. It's gonna make a real sticky syrup. You can stop cooking once it hits the consistency you like. We like it a little bit more runny, only because it makes a lot more syrup that way, and we have a lot of people to feed, and so we use a lot of syrup. It makes it last longer, but if you want a maple syrup consistency syrup, you just keep cooking it until it gets to that consistency. Alright, the boil is starting. Gonna let it get really rolling. And then we're gonna turn it down. Okay, I'm gonna try to show you this. The lighting's not the best here. So we've been kind of this rolling, I don't know what to call it. Maybe it's still a boil. It's a simmery boil. Still got lots of bubbles. Been going like that for a while. We've lost probably a good 2 inches off the pot. Still pretty juicy, but if you touch it, it's pretty sticky. You don't want it to coat like jelly where it gets stuck, because you obviously want to put it on like syrup, but that's still probably just a little bit too runny. Okay, we've got it to the consistency that I like, which, like I said before, it's a little bit more runny. I'll show it to you here in a second, than maple syrup, but I do that on purpose because it makes twice as much for us to eat over the winter. If you want it thicker, you just need to keep cooking it. Into the water bath canner they go. They need to process for 10 minutes. That means it'll come to a rolling boil, and then it's 10 minutes and you turn the heat off, and then they'll be sealed. These are the ones I did earlier, so altogether I've made 18 pints. You can also make them in half-pint jars and in that water bath canner too. I will tell you, there is a cheat that I use. So I like to do, like I said, the runnier consistency so I can make a lot more, and my family doesn't mind it. However, if we're doing like brunch and wanting to have a nice syrupy, warm apple syrup to impress some guests, you can add a little bit of cornstarch and warm it up on the stove that way, and you'll get a really nice syrupy consistency. You can't can it with the cornstarch in it. I don't think that's considered safe, though I know some people do it. I'm kind of a rule book follower when it comes to canning, but if you add it when you're ready to serve breakfast, if you add some cornstarch, warm it up on the stove, it'll get super thick, and it'll make a great impressive homemade syrup for any brunch. So thanks so much for watching. We'll post the recipe below too in case you want to try it at home. And happy syrup making. Say bye. Bye. Post-log used the syrup to make a glaze and barbecue sauce for our pork ribs tonight. It's really good. I'll post that recipe below too if you want to try it. Lots of things you can do with syrup besides just pancakes.